Hello, and welcome to the Money Mile Podcast. I am your host, Justin Waller, and I am happy you are here. We like to think of Money Mile as standing at the corner of triathlon and personal finance. We believe that age group triathletes are the lifeblood of our sport, and we like shining the light on some good people doing great things in our sport. I hope this is going to be a valuable conversation for you. Today, we are going to skip our questions on course segment because we have a special guest to the show, Cherie Gruenfeld. Cherie has been competing in triathlons for 33 years and completed her first Ironman triathlon when she was 48 years old. So I'll let you do the math on that one. Cherie competed in her first Ironman triathlon, which happened to be in Kona in 1992 at the age of 48. She is currently the oldest woman to complete the Ironman World Championships at the age of 78 and the Ironman 70.3 World Championships at the age of 80. And currently holds 14 Ironman World Age Group titles, 5 Ironman 70.3 World Age Group titles, and she is the founder and director of Exceeding Expectations, a nonprofit organization helping at-risk kids in San Bernardino graduate high school and further their education. Cherie, welcome to Money Mile.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Cherie, if we're doing our job correctly here, our listeners are out there on their long, steady run somewhere. So we'll put links in the show notes for all of our listeners so they can catch up with any of the connections or any of the resources that we talk about today. So is that okay with you?
Sure.
Wonderful. So can you share with us a little bit about how you got started in triathlon way back when?
Well, it was way back then. When I went to high school and college, there was no Title IX. So I had no opportunity to compete in any sports. And then I became an adult, went to work, and that was it. But the story of how it got started for me is actually a two-parter. And the first part starts on a Sunday morning in March 1986. I'm living in LA. And on this Sunday morning, my husband and I were just kind of hanging out, reading the LA Times. And I read that the first LA Marathon was happening that day. I didn't know anybody that ran. I didn't run, but it sounded fascinating to me. And it was on a local station. So I turned on the TV and I watched that wire to wire. And at the end of that, I would like to say I got inspired, but actually it was more that I thought, here are 11,000 people, that first marathon, running on this Sunday morning. They've been training, they have a goal, and now they're out there doing their thing. And I'm lying around here watching. What's wrong with this picture? So the next day I went out and I bought a book called How to Run Your First Marathon. And I bought a pair of running shoes and I started running. And the goal was to run the LA Marathon the following March. And that was in March. By August, my husband, Lee, he plays a big part in this. So I had him drive me out 20 miles from home. And I got out of the car and I started running home. I noticed that he followed me kind of, and every few miles he drove up, checked if I was okay, and gave me something to drink. And I thought, isn't this nice? He's getting into this new thing I'm doing. But I actually realized later that he knew less about running even than I did. And I think he thought I might just keel over and die somewhere in that 20 miles and thought he might need to be in the area if it happened. It didn't. I finished the 20 miles. I felt fine. And it was actually he that suggested, why are you thinking about waiting till next March to do a marathon? You're ready. I don't know why I listened to him because he really doesn't know anything about it, but I did. So I signed up for the Run Through the Redwood Forest in October. So that was just 7 months after I saw the marathon on TV. But I ran that and I loved it. I realized I had a little game. I did better than I thought I would. And I just loved it. And it was easy to work with the work that I was doing. So I continued to do that. I ran a couple of marathons every year. And I didn't even know going in that I should shoot for a 3-hour marathon. But my times were such that if I'd have been smart, I would have set that as a goal because I was getting very close. But I never did because the second part of the story, which starts in October of 1991. And I picked up a competitor magazine, which was a magazine that was a Southern California magazine. And since it was in October, when the Ironman is in Kona, it was wall to wall, all about the Kona Ironman. And I read this magazine cover to cover, and I thought, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Who are these people that can do this? I didn't own a bike. I could swim, but I wasn't a swimmer. And I just thought it never occurred to me that this was something that I might be interested in. But I left the magazine lying around, and Lee picked it up and read it and came to me and said, you should try this. You should do this. You'd be good at it. He knew nothing about it, but he did know me. And this really was my kind of thing. But I still said, no, I think it's nuts. I'm a marathoner. And he pulled this, what I call the water torture method. Just every once in a while, when I didn't know it was coming, he'd say, you should try it. You should do it. And it didn't take him long. Pretty soon I got to where I thought, yeah, I would like to try this. But there was a little complication. He had just left his nice paying job to try his hand at writing a novel. And so we didn't have kids, but I was still the money breadwinner in the family while he was doing this thing. And the job that I had, I traveled a lot. And so I knew that I couldn't learn to ride a bike and swim and do this whole thing with the schedule that I had. So I said to him, I'm interested, but it's going to have to wait for a while. This is not something I can do now. So I went about my way of just running. And in January of 1992, maybe February, I guess, he came home with a book contract and he put it down. I was sitting at my desk. He put it down right in front of me. And he said, put your money where your mouth is, take 6 months off and go try this thing. And by this time, I didn't ask any questions. I didn't give any thought to how we're going to do this. I just said, you bet, I'm good. And you can probably appreciate this part of the story. I went to my company and I said, I want to do this. Our fiscal year ended in March. And so they said, we need you to stay with us through that and then go. So I'm still working and thinking how I'm going to do this thing. I knew I couldn't just buy a book this time like I did with the marathon. So I read about this guy in San Diego that did some coaching. So I thought maybe he can help me. His name was Ron Smith. And so I gave him a call. And this is exactly how the call went. It's been 33 years, but I remember it precisely. I said, Ron, my name is Cherie Gruenfeld. I'm not a triathlete, but I'm going to do Kona in October. And there was dead silence on the other end of the phone because, I didn't know anything about qualifying. You had to do that. And he said, that's good. How are you going to get there? And I thought, this guy's not so bright. How am I going to get to Hawaii from California? So I said to him with a little bit of attitude, I said, well, I thought I'd fly. And he could have stopped this whole thing right there and said, I don't want any part of this lady. But he didn't. And he came back and he said, I meant, how are you going to qualify? To which I said, qualify. Anyway, so he said, since you're not a triathlete and you want to do an Ironman, I suggest you find another Ironman to do because you're not going to qualify for Kona. In those days, you could get in. There were only about 3 other Ironmans, and one of them was in Canada. And so I signed up for Canada, and I started training. And in August, I was doing Mike and Rod's Most Excellent Triathlon in Ventura, a half Ironman, as my last training before I did Canada. I didn't win my age group, and I didn't even know it was a qualifying race when I went into it. So afterwards at the awards, they were giving out Kona slots. I came in third place to a set of twins who had been doing Ironman forever. And so they came to the podium and they said to the first place twin, do you want the slot? She said, I already got one. They went to her sister and said, do you want the slot? She was second. Do you want the slot? And she said, already got one. So they came to me and I didn't even think about it. I just accepted it, even though in June, I had seen a video of the 1991 Ironman. And in those days, they were still showing, it was an extreme sport as far as everybody was concerned. And they were showing blood and guts, people crashing, people falling down on the run. I watched that and I turned to Lee, who watched it with me, and I said to him, it's a good thing I can't get into this Kona race because I have no business being there. Well, flash forward 2 months when they said, do you want the slot? I said, you bet. So in 1992, I was standing on the shore in Kona, and did my first Ironman, ran across the finish line into Lee's arms and said, I love this. I know how I can do it better the next time. And I'm never going back to that job again because I had just taken a leave. So that was the beginning of this 33-year deal that I've been on.
Oh, that is a wonderful story. So 33 years of triathlon, and I'm sure there are lots of highs and lows over a career like that. I'm curious at this point, and you looking forward, I know that success means different things to different people at different times in their career. How are you defining success these days?
Well, these days it's really very much like it always has been. My times are different. My goals are, not so fast, but that kind of thing. But I have always looked at success not as winning and not as hitting a goal time, but rather, did I give it everything I had on that day? Because if you do these things a lot, you're going to have times where you go into races and you're not 100%, or in the middle of your race, you become not 100%. And to me, the races that I am most proud of are not my fastest, but they are the ones where I wasn't 100%, but I sucked it up and I gave 100% of what I had and crossed the finish line, because those are the ones that are really tough. So that to me is success. And now at this age, I got to tell you, everything is hard. No matter how healthy you are, no matter how much you're training, how well your training has gone, it's just tough. So when I finish a race now, I'm always pleased. It's always success to me.
I'm sure out of a storied career, there are tons of individual stories you can reflect back on. I'm curious if there's one race that stands out in your mind as something that was particularly challenging, you worked through, and now that you are just so proud that you were able to work through those challenges. Is there anything that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, there really is. And it just happens to be my last Ironman race when I was 78. And I need to lay the background a little bit for this. I'd always said that I would know it was time to give up Ironman racing when I wasn't enjoying the training, or if I had gotten slow enough that I was just fighting to make the cutoffs. Well, in 2015, I was training for Kona, like I usually do. It was the middle of summer. I live in the desert where 115, 120 is fairly regular. And here in this desert, every year we get a couple of weeks of humidity. It was in June, and I was doing an 80-mile ride, and it was 118 degrees, and it was one of those humid days. So did the ride. I was about 10 miles from home, and I stopped at a fire station to get some more ice for my fluids. And a couple of the fire guys came up to me and said, "What are you doing outside today? Nobody should be out." And I said, I'm good. I've just got 10 miles to go. I'm good. I got back on my bike, started riding, and I realized there's a truck behind me, not a fire truck, but a truck from the fire station with these two guys in it. So I stopped and went to them and I said, "What are you guys doing?" And they said, "We're just following you home to make sure you're okay." So I got back on my bike and I'm riding 118 degrees, humid, the end of an 80-mile ride. Two guys are having to follow me to make sure that I'm all right. This is it. I'm not enjoying this. So I right then and there made the decision that I would work hard for that year. And if I had a race I was proud of, I would stop Ironman racing. Didn't mean stop racing. I would do 70.3s, but no more Ironman racing. That was when I was 71, I guess. So that's what I did. I started racing 70.3s and I'm happy and having a good time. But I turned 75 a few years later. And I thought, that's kind of a landmark year. I think I'll try and qualify and go back again. So I was getting all trained up. I got my qualifying slot ready to go. And in July, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so operated and I got the treatment. I did very well, but it took me out for the next 6 months. So no Ironman. Then I thought, well, I started this thing. I'm going to do it the next year. Next year was COVID. And so now I'm 78 and I really was not hankering to do an Ironman, but I had started that. I was going to finish it. So I went into the race and I was well trained. I was feeling good, but I really didn't know how well I could do it. Hadn't raced an Ironman for 7 years. So I was doing great until about mile 20, just out of the energy lab. Just had to get home that last 6 miles. And it was the first year back from COVID. They didn't have the standard 1 mile aid stations on the run. They were stretched out a little bit. So many of us, including me, decided to wear our own belt and fill it up. Well, I was just wearing an old one from home and it got all wet and it was bouncing with this big bottle in it. And I could feel it pressing on my back. Well, apparently at some point it just was too much for my back. I took one step just on when I got back on the highway to go 6 miles home, and I was hit by the worst back spasm. I'd never had one before. I didn't know anything about this. I just doubled up. I couldn't stand up. Well, I made it, but it was the worst experience that I've had. But never once did I think I can't do this. Not once. And I think that that's the only way that I made it home was just, this is just what you have to deal with now. So just keep putting one foot in the other. And I happened to beat the other girls. Two of them dropped out and the third one was having her own troubles. So I won that race, but it wasn't the win that made it special to me. It was what I had to fight through to get there. I wouldn't have known that I could do that. So that will always stand out for me.
And just to make sure that we're all clear, you were able to overcome that degree of physical pain 20 miles into the run of an Ironman. So you've covered 120 miles between the swim and the bike. You're 20 miles in, you're almost done with the run, your back locks up and you're still able to finish. You do all of that at the age of 78.
That's right. Yeah.
On top of all of that, not only did you finish, but you won. You won your age group.
Yeah.
That is just an inspirational story. While many other people could have easily just checked the box and DNF'd for the day, you were able to persevere and stick it out. That is the type of story that gives me goosebumps, and I very much appreciate you sharing that. I know that triathlon can be an expensive hobby. If you've been doing it for 33 years, you've probably seen several things come and go. But I'm kind of curious, for a newbie triathlete, could you help a newer person understand how to get maybe a little bit more bang for their buck on the financial side?
Yeah. Some people may disagree with me on this, but I believe that it's very easy for a newbie to fall into the trap of, if you don't have top of the line equipment, if you don't do the same thing that the pros do and spend your money like that, you don't have a real chance in this sport. And that is simply not true. Good gear is better than a piece of, but it is not how you are successful in Ironman. I would advise spending your money on just a good bike, not a top of the line. Spend your money on a good coach, but a reasonable one that is not charging you because he's in the business because he wants to make money. You don't have to stay in the host hotels. Go a few miles down the road. You are far better off spending your money and your efforts by training your body and your mind. You can be successful with a strong body and a strong mind far better than you will with top of the line 10, 15 grand bike. So just don't believe that you have to spend that kind of money in order to be successful.
From the financial side of things, I've seen newbie triathletes that toe the line for their first race with a $10,000 bike. And if you happen to be independently wealthy and that's the way you want to allocate your funds, then wonderful. But I love that you highlighted it's not a requirement. And a lot of people look at triathlon, while it can be an expensive hobby, if we're looking at it objectively, for most age groupers, you don't need that sort of thing. And you can gradually build your arsenal of gear over time. You don't have to have everything at once. It's much more important to focus on training yourself, training your body, and training your mind than necessarily having top of the line equipment.
And, the other thing is that if they're a newbie, they may or may not stay in the sport. And if you spend $10,000 or $15,000 on a bike and then decide that this is not your thing, That's just stupid.
I think that also kind of opens the door that if you're trying something, it's okay to spend a little bit of money. Like, okay, well, technically, yes, you do have to own a bike in order to, or have, but you can borrow one. You do have to ride a bike to finish a triathlon. That doesn't mean you have to go top of the line with your first endeavor. As you're working into triathlon, I typically encourage people to build over time. Start with a basic bike. If you've done a couple of sprints in Olympics and you feel like, yeah, I want to go longer distance, okay, that's when you might want to consider, okay, maybe you look at a triathlon specific bike, or once you've had a couple of years into it and you have a little bit more commitment to it, you're enjoying it, that's when you can start to invest a little bit more in it. But don't break the bank early, because as you pointed out, you might decide 6 months from now that's not something you want to do anymore, and then you've got a $15,000 wall ornament in your garage that doesn't do anybody any good. So I just encourage people to gradually build that over time and make sure that they're comfortable with it. So we would also like to shine some light on the great work that you're doing with your nonprofit. The name of it is Exceeding Expectations. So can you tell us a little bit about how that program was started, the challenges that you faced along the way, and how it continues to be successful in helping at-risk kids using the sport of triathlon?
You bet I can. I would like to tell you that I had a vision and I knew that I needed to do something like this, but that's not the way it started at all. It's pure serendipity. We had moved out to Lake Arrowhead, and I had been invited by a group down in Redlands to speak. And I spoke to them. And afterwards, a teacher came up to me and said, do you ever talk to kids? And I said, sure, I'd love to. So she invited me to school, and I spoke with a group of 200 fifth and sixth grade kids in a school cafeteria. And as anybody knows, you put 200 elementary school kids in a cafeteria, it can get a little crazy. But these kids were just great. I talked to them about setting goals and working hard on the goals and how it felt when you accomplished a goal. And then I showed them a video of me, just a short little video of me doing Kona one year when I was trying to break a course record. And at the end of the video, the kids all stood up and cheered, and then they started asking questions, and they were good questions, and they listened to the answers, and it was just great. So afterwards, I said to the teacher, there's a little triathlon coming up in a neighboring city, and I would be happy to help anybody that wants to do it. Envisioning a couple of kids that had bikes, had parents that would help. Well, the next day I got a frantic call from the teacher, and she had had that same group together. She told them about my offer, and 200 hands shot up. And she said, what are we going to do? And I said, tell the kids to come to the school grounds on Saturday, and I will be there, and I'll pick a small group of kids and train them. So on Saturday, not 200 kids, but a large group of kids showed up. And this should have been my first clue. Not a single adult in sight, not a one. So anyway, I gave the kids instructions for running around the playground and watched them. And the main thing I was looking for was not necessarily kids with running talent, but kids that could follow directions. So I selected 12 kids. And then I turned to the teacher. I still didn't get the kind of kids I was working with, And so I turned to the teacher, and in my usual take charge way, I said, now here's what we'll do. We'll send a note home to these parents telling them that your child has been selected for the yada, yada, yada. And it was almost, she didn't do this, but it was like literally like she just kind of grabbed my shirt and said, Cherie, you don't get it. She said, you come down here next Saturday again, and we will go to the places these 12 kids live. And so I did. And that next Saturday changed my life. I always felt like I understood poverty. And I think I did, but I had always looked at it from the outside looking in. And on that day, I went in and looked out. And the only words over the years that I've been able to come up with to describe the way I felt was hopelessness. There was just nothing. If there was an adult inside, there was nothing that they could give the kids. And the kids they were doomed to live that same life. And I didn't know what I could do about it. I hadn't planned on doing anything about it, except train these kids for this race. But I realized that this was really something that we needed to do. So I went out and got bikes for all these kids, just went to my triathlete friends and said, can we borrow a bike? I didn't even know it was going to go on and on. So I said, We borrowed bikes and went to a race director and asked her, can you help us out? Got it all set up and trained these kids and got relay members, got people to run and swim for them. And it was in a pool triathlon. So it worked out fine. And the kids loved it. They were just great. So they came to me as a group and said, we want to do it again. So I said, that's fine. Next time you have to bike and run. No problem. So we trained them. Next race they did. Came to me again and said, we want to do it again. You see where this is going. And I said, that's fine. Next time, swim, bike, and run. And as a group, they stood up and said, we don't swim. You know, these kids didn't have backyard pools. They didn't have clubs that they could join. Of this group, many of them had never seen the ocean, 60 miles away, never seen the ocean. So I said, okay, but this triathlon is 3 sports. You have to go through the water to get to the finish line. So I will be at the pool and you can get on my back. You can get in my arms, whatever. I'll get you through the water, but you have to do the swim. So it was quite a day. I have never in all of my triathlon career come so close to drowning as I did that day because these kids were some of them were terrified. So they were just flailing me while they were on my back, but we all got them all through. And so that was it. I would continue the next races. I continued helping them in the water, but they were on board. But what we were doing was good. We were getting them out of their environment, taking them to places where there were people that were successful. They were learning to set goals and learning to get through tough spots. But one day, a few months later, I was taking kids home after an event and talking to them about graduating from high school and going to college. And little Nicholas was riding shotgun right next to me. And he turned to me and he said these exact words. He said, Cherie, why are you talking to us about that? That's for other kids. It's not for us. And those words just knocked me out. And I realized of these 12 kids, I didn't know it then, but I came to learn of these 12 kids, not a one had anybody in their family who had graduated high school. That was their expectation. You know, we're not going to graduate from high school. So I realized that what we were doing was good, but it wasn't enough. And what we needed to do was to get these kids to understand and their families to understand that education was their ticket out. And it was something for them if they were willing to go put in the work. So that became exceeding expectations and what our mission was. Now, that as far as the challenges, the biggest challenge, and I was warned, there was a doctor that I rode with who was a Hispanic guy, came from a well-to-do family, but he understood the Hispanic community in the area. And he said to me, Cherie, you've got to be prepared to be disappointed because these kids will spend the day with you and then they go home and their peers and their family are saying, why are you hanging with that like white lady? She doesn't care about you. And I know that was going on. But what I figured is the only way I can do this, it's going to be a tough sell, coming in and saying to these kids, we're going to help you. You'll graduate from high school and you'll go on to college. How do you get them to believe that? Well, the only way to get them to believe it is to do it. And along the way, make sure that they know that every time you say you're going to do something, you do it. The worst thing you can do for folks like that is to make them a promise and then not carry through. So it didn't take too long for them to believe that this white lady's going to be around for a while and she's going to do what she says she's going to do. So that became easier when that was the attitude. And then what has kept this thing going and makes it so much easier is that now we have a track record. So they don't have to believe me. They can see it. These kids, we have kids that have graduated from college, have great professional lives now, but they are still in the general area, Southern California. And it's very powerful when one of those kids stands up in front of these little ones and says, I was just like you. I was sitting right there in that chair and look at me now. And so that's one of the reasons why. And now all the parents, we have parents that amazing amount of parents that are involved with this because they now know that when I tell them I'm going to do something and we're going to put your kid through college, that we really do that. It works one kid at a time. We have no paid people. It's simply one kid solving their problems at the time they have them. and keeping everybody on track. But it works. It works.
Cherie, that is wonderful. If I understand, Exceeding Expectations has been going on for 24 years now. Is that correct?
Started in December of 2000.
Just out of curiosity, I know a lot of triathletes are numbers people who like to have numbers to judge things. Do you have a sense of how many young people you have impacted through a program like this? Do you know how many total enrollment over time?
It's a question that I get asked in some form a lot. We've got 38 college graduates. Some of those are 4 years, some of them are 2 year. We also have a number of kids who've gone to trade schools. But part of the problem is a kid from this environment will disappear in the night sometimes and be gone for years and then show up again, or he's gone forever. It's not a stable environment that they live in. We're trying to make their particular environment stable, but they live in a very unstable. There's always money issues, and if people can't pay the rent, it's easier to disappear in the night. So as far as kids that we've impacted, I can't say. I have kids that came back that I have long since forgotten and tell me how much I impacted their lives. Not a lot of them, but it's happened several times. So I know that we're making impact, even if they don't follow what we like, which is to get into college and, get a real job. But even the ones that didn't follow that path, they're doing okay.
And I think it's great that if nothing else, you're just helping other people understand that there are opportunities out there. In my world, when I think about the more hard things that you do, the more hard things you can do. And maybe it's triathlon, maybe it's learning how to swim, maybe it's passing math class. The more you do hard stuff, the better you're going to get at it. And the confidence that I would imagine you help instill in these young people that are maybe they never swam before, maybe they never rode a bike. You're helping them through these things and building these skill sets that are going to be universal life skills, whether or not they've finished triathlons down the road or not. You're helping build those skills in young people to overcome challenges and have a better result, have a better vision for their future than they might have otherwise had in their community otherwise, and being able to see a potential future of something better than what is otherwise around them. So, Cherie, thank you so much for the work that you're doing in the world. This is just a tremendous story. I'll definitely look forward to hearing more about Exceeding Expectations and how all of that continues to develop. Please keep up the good work on that front.
Thank you.
So, what would you consider to be the most underrated aspect of triathlons, or maybe something you think more triathletes should know about?
Well, to be a triathlete doesn't mean that you go to races. It means a lot more than that. I think that what triathletes, some of them learn right off the bat, and some of them I think learn after they've been doing it for a while, and some of them never learn. But that when you start this business of triathlons, you become a part of a family. And it doesn't matter if you do the short distance or the long distance, if you're a pro or you're an amateur. If you see a guy in an airport that's wearing an Ironman t-shirt or a local race t-shirt, you know something about that person without even meeting them. But the chances are pretty good that two of you will strike up a conversation. I have a number of friends that we met, not necessarily in airports, but something like that. And we're still friends. We see each other like twice in our lives, but we're still friends. And that's the family that triathlon is. The Ironman family is kind of a special family, but every triathlete is part of the big family. And I think when people go into, Lord knows, when I did that first triathlon, I had no idea that I was going to become a part of this thing, and it would so define me and be part of my life and make me have something in common with somebody I didn't even know. But that's the way it is when you're a triathlete. So I think people should think about that. It's a big deal in my book.
I would agree. I've bumped into people at airports that turns out, years down the road, we live within miles of each other and have an instant camaraderie that, oh, hey, yeah, we can talk triathlons. And maybe I don't see them every month or every year, but hey, I see them every once in a while. Hey, how are things going? I have an interest in that camaraderie. How are they doing? How are their families doing? Are you still racing? What are you looking forward to this year? Sometimes you can find yourself in a situation where you haven't talked with somebody for years, but you can instantly pick things right back check up and have a solid relationship with people just because you have a foundational understanding of where they were, at least at one point in their life. I know that not everybody who does a triathlon is going to do it for 33 years, which is a tremendous accomplishment in and of itself. But at one point in their life, they were really committed to doing something difficult and putting themselves out there. Not everybody gets to be on the top of podiums and all of that, but everybody gets to push themselves and be a better version of themselves through triathlon. So now, Cherie, you are also an inductee into the USA Triathlon Hall of Fame and have been involved in the sport for quite a while. So could you tell us a little bit about why you enjoy triathlon and where you think that longevity comes from?
Well, the aforementioned being part of this family makes it something that I really enjoy. But, when I started this 33 years ago, I never had the goal of being around this long. I've had a lot of goals, but never anything like sticking around that long. But I find that there are a couple of reasons that I still want to be there. One is that, like I said, being part of this family, I like this family. I don't necessarily want to leave. In fact, I hope that when I do have to stop racing, that I will still be engaged with what's going on. That's certainly one of the reasons I like this environment. And another one is certainly that I like staying fit. And I don't know if I have it in me to work as hard as I do now to stay fit if I don't have that race goal. I just I'm not sure. I know I would always be active and I'd always stay at some level of fitness, but I like the level of fitness I'm at right now. So that kind of makes me want to stick around and keep pushing myself. But probably the most important and the one that I would never have thought of is that I've been raised through this triathlon community for 33 years, and I've raced with people my own age all that time. And almost all of them have just had to drop out because of one thing or another. They are not still able to do it. And I think about it sometimes when I'm out there in the middle of a hard training, is I'm still able to do it. And these people would like to be doing it, but they can't. So isn't it kind of a responsibility that I have to give it what I've got for as long as I've got it? And then, I just kind of as an aside, you would be surprised at how many people over the years, young kids at a race, ask, "Can I take a picture of you? I want to send it to my mom. She's your age and she just sits on the couch." And one time, even at a race, a woman came up to me and said, "You don't know me, but my daughter sent me a picture of you. And I was lying on the couch and now I'm doing triathlons." And that kind of stuff, I figure that if nothing else, racing at this age, no matter how hard it is, if it inspires somebody, then I'm fine with that. I'm great with that. So I will take this old age stuff like I have a choice. So that keeps me in it too.
Oh, that's wonderful. And that being able to be an inspiration to others, adding fuel to the fire, as it were, to help keep you focused and keep you going. I know I typically don't train as well as I would like unless I've got a race on the calendar. But like you said, just keeps you honest and keeps you focused on a goal and trying to perform at your best. Well, Cherie, thank you again so much for sharing your time with the Money Mile community. Thank you for coming on the show. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors and look forward to hearing more great things out of the Exceeding Expectations Foundation, the work that you're doing there. Are you still actively pursuing races, podiums at this point? Do you have any A races on the calendar for this year?
Yeah. I have a race in Kona in 2 weeks. The 70.3 there.
Oh, that's 70.3. Wonderful. Yeah. Oh, that's great. I did that race a couple of years ago. I understand they've changed the course now and made it a little bit better, but I thoroughly enjoyed the 70.3 out there. It might be my only opportunity to race in Kona. I don't necessarily have that particular genetic capacity or whatever it was, but I did thoroughly enjoy the 70.3. So I wish you the best of luck with that. I hope it goes well. How are you feeling with your training at this point? Are you ready?
I was yesterday.
Oh, uh-oh.
Yesterday, I did a bike like 45 miles and a run. I was feeling so good. And on the run, I was thinking, man, I'm just at the right place at the right time. Everything's going well. And all of a sudden, my calf just shot. What didn't feel as bad as a real solid calf strain, but something was going on there. I stopped and cut my run short, and now I am nursing it. So there may not be any more training from now till race day. I hope to get it back in shape.
All right. Well, I wish you the best on the recovery road there. Hopefully, you're able to recover enough to have a solid performance, something that you can be proud of and have a confident race. But looking out for your health first. Certainly don't want you to overstrain or push and do something that would be damaging long term. So we'll be thinking some good thoughts and sending good thoughts your way. And we'll look forward to seeing more about the exceeding expectations and your results here in a couple of weeks. So we'll look forward to hearing more about that.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Cherie for coming on the show. I really appreciate your capacity to work through the years and set an example for others of how to overcome challenges and help use the sport of triathlon to help other people. We will be including links in the show notes for Cherie's journey and the success of her nonprofit exceeding expectations, so you can learn more about that. But I hope that this segment was a valuable time spent for you. And if it was, please share the podcast with your training buddies and friends. Keep in mind that if you work out, everything else will too. And we'll look forward to talking with you next time on Money Mile.